Welcome to Coffee Charge Conversations. We are at Real Global Productions today, and we actually have a new reigning champion in the ice bath front, and that is our new guest for today, Cameron Joubert.
Good to be here. Good to be number one on the leaderboard as well. First ice bath, had to put my name out there. But yeah, thanks for having me.
And how was the ice bath experience for you? I think it was your first ice bath today.
Yeah, I was very nervous. Obviously, you went first, watching you. Didn't know what to expect. Thought it was going to be a bit worse. But once you pushed that 2-minute barrier, as you said, I felt comfortable. And I feel like a newborn gazelle after getting out. So it was pretty good.
And I think the main reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, not only are you're a very nice person and we always have really nice conversations, but I think you also have a very inspiring story to tell. And I wanted to ask if you would be able to share your journey and your story so far.
Yeah, 100%. So, as you said, we have a good relationship and always felt comfortable having those conversations and sharing my life with you at that like that. But I also like spreading my story and using my story to inspire other people and just giving people something to hold on to if they're going through a tough time in life. So, just to give a little bit of a background, obviously it's clear I've got a little bit of a battle wound. So fresh out of high school, started varsity, everything's cloud nine, height of life. You just finished high school, you're meeting new people, going to see new places, enjoying everything. And then you get a little bit of a scare with a mass that you don't know what it is. So now you've gone from that peak moment in life, breaking the barrier of taking the shackles off of school, and now you've got this, okay, what's going on here? So long story short, after a few doctor's consultations, we still weren't quite sure what it was, but that little seed of doubt set in, that knowing what goes on in life and in the world, it's so prominent these days, which is a horrible thing, but it could be cancer. That was one of the thoughts going through my head. And yeah, so on the 26th of February 2018, I was diagnosed with cancer. It was a sarcoma that was sitting in my right forearm, in the muscle cavity. So while it was in its infancy, you couldn't really actually see any external lump or like no indication that there was something wrong. But that's what it was. So literally 2-3 weeks into varsity, just had O week, had the most incredible experience. This hit. So we didn't know what to do straight away. So we obviously had to reach out for some contacts, get into contact with some good doctors. And I went straight into chemotherapy, which was an experience in its own. But I tried to maintain the varsity during my chemo. I think I'm quite a strong person from that, but wasn't quite strong enough mentally to take on studying and going through chemo. So I deregistered from varsity and just put my whole into getting through the therapy. We did 3 sessions over a 3-month period, and the tumor was actually chemo resistant. So it was growing and growing and growing, and we were putting my body through all this like pain and trauma trying to deal with it, but we actually weren't getting anywhere. So we were just going through that tough time for no real outcome. So it came to a decision on the 2nd of June of that year that he didn't quite put it on a timeline because of putting that mental stress on you, but he said, okay, we either have to amputate now or we really have to look for something out of the box, and there could be some serious risks here. So I said, life is there to be lived, like you're meant to live it to the full and experience everything, and I can't do that if I'm constantly on these therapies and doing all this experimental stuff with in the back of my head that this could be not the thing that's going to work. So we decided to amputate, and right arm, which was my dominant arm for 18 years. I always say I was right-handed for 18 years, and for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been left-handed. So it was a crazy moment to sit there and tell somebody face to face that, yes, you can take the hand that I learned to write with, that I learned to hold a tennis racket with, that I learned to play cricket with, golf with, like something that was so important to me. You say, okay, for the betterment of my life, take it away. So amputated. I then decided the rest of that year from June until December, I was just going to completely like take life in that moment. Went on a few trips to Cape Town, the Kruger, just completely get away from it all. Because obviously now you got to think, I've deregistered from varsity. I have lost my dominant arm. Where do I go from here? Do I go back into what I was studying? What is my next step? So then I thought, you know what? We can't make that decision now. We've already made one of the toughest decisions. Let's put it on the back burner. We'll get to it. So I took some time off, recovered, did some very silly things my doctor would hate to hear. Played tennis like 3 weeks after my amputation, running around the court with my full-on bandages, which was to the horror of everyone, but it had to be done. And then, yeah, I had to learn how to write, because then by the time I got to about November, December, I decided I was going back to varsity in the new year, studying something completely different at a different institution. So yeah, taught myself how to write, went back to varsity. One of the proudest things that I hold close to me is that I was able to write all my examinations before COVID kind of messed it up, but all my examinations handwritten without any extra time. That was one of my big goals, was to learn how to write, give myself that independence, and then accomplish something like that without having to be, oh, he's disabled, he has this, let's give him something to make it easier. So that was a huge thing for me. Did my degree, had an absolute blast, and now in the working world. So that's my story in like a nutshell, as it is huge trauma and big decisions, but realizing that each of our lives is on its own path. Can't compare, you can't race against each other. Yes, I added a year to my studies. Yes, I added a year for recovery. But in the greater scheme of things, I'm here today sitting on this nice couch in the studio talking to one of my good mates and just sharing about life. Whereas if I dwelled on that negativity and all that trauma, who knows where I would be now. So yeah, that's kind of, yeah, as I said, in a nutshell.
And I think, I mean, that's obviously a very traumatic experience that you went through, but it's quite hard to adjust your mindset again when you're almost in, I can imagine, a stage where other people are feeling sorry for you, you're almost starting to feel sorry for you. And how do you actually get out of that headspace where, you actually go on and, like you say, you're motivated to learn how to write left-handed? I mean, yeah, how do you do all those tasks that used to be so simple and so natural? How do you adjust your brain to actually starting fresh again?
So I think one of the toughest things in the beginning was understanding that people naturally feel sorry for you. Like, they're not trying to bring you down or like look down on you, but it's just a natural human emotion to like, or empathy. If someone is empathetic and they see someone that's gone through something or is struggling with something, they naturally just have that feeling. So I've never, in the beginning, like, I really didn't like it, because I've always wanted to do things on my own and like do things to the best I could do it without having people having to like nurture me and look after me. And I was struggling with that in the beginning, because in every environment, people would watch me struggle, because you've got to struggle to learn. Like, you have to try something to the point where you can get better at it, but people would always not quite let me get through that on my own in the beginning. But so I struggled in the beginning, and then I made it very vocal. And I think a lot of people that have disabilities, once they've settled in themselves, they let people in their circle know that if I don't like ask for help, or if I don't actively show that I need assistance, I'm just a normal person. Like, there's silly little things like tying shoes. Oh my word. You would never think tying shoes is something that would trip you up. Sorry for the ridiculous pun. Like, yeah, there's so many little things that you struggle with still, but you can just do them on your own. Like you can struggle for a little bit, but you find methods. And now I'm comfortable in myself, and like I work a full-time 9 to 5, and I play sports and I do whatever because now I know how I do things. But in the beginning, it was really tough because I didn't know how I did things. I didn't know how I would carry a mug and a plate to the tea room without dropping it. Like, I didn't know all those things. So then people were trying to help, and I wasn't settled in myself. So it took a while. And like, I was trying to jump back into being a young 20-year-old going to festivals and doing all this stuff. And like, I didn't know how I would like go towards certain activities and tasks. So I was very insecure, but also didn't want people to help, but like I needed them. And then I got to a point where I was like, you just have to understand that not every task is going to be easy off the bat. As soon as you understand that you have skills, you have the mentality to get to the end point, but you have to understand that there's a beginning point as well. Then I realized I don't have to be insecure that, okay, it takes me slightly longer to do this, or the way I'm doing it doesn't look right to people, but it's my way. And you got to find that way. And I think a lot of people with disabilities, different disabilities, they all have ways of accomplishing what they need to accomplish. And unless they actively reach out to somebody when they can't get to the end point that they want, that's when somebody will move in to help. So yeah, I said it was like a huge journey of understanding like that whole thing of people just like they just want to help you. Um, but yeah, it's not nice always feeling vulnerable, or so yeah, it was a massive part of my journey, I think, growing into that. Yeah.
And what's been the hardest task to perform with one arm?
So I always like people laugh because they'll see a video of me playing golf, and then my two pet peeves of tasks. Okay, I'll say three. Hanging washing. Hanging washing is horrendous. Absolutely hate it. I don't even know if it's a one hand thing, but I just absolutely hate hanging washing, folding. Just doesn't go well. Tying shoes, you will never. So like now on these shoes here that I'm wearing, I have like a magnetic shoelace thing, and I'm slowly getting rid of all my shoes with shoelaces because tying shoes, hanging washing, and then buttering a piece of toast. Buttering a piece of toast with one hand is possibly the most like annoying, because you know you wake up, you groggy, you pour a cup of coffee, and you know, okay, let's just have a slice of toast. The butter's not that soft. The bread is now got that little bit of moisture from being warm on the plate, sliding left and right. Buttering toast, hanging, washing, tying shoes. Worst three things. Playing golf, playing tennis, whatever. Great, easy. Those three things are not the ones.
But I mean, I guess there's always a bright side to things. For me, I hate driving manual cars. At least you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
There's no changing gears or anything like that. But I think what's quite amazing, and we've discussed it briefly in previous conversations, is your ability to still want to do those things and perform those tasks that you used to be able to. You need quite a strong mindset to be able to do that. And one of those things was golf. How did you actually get back into golf? Especially, you're used to playing with two arms. Golf is probably one of the most complicated games in the world, and definitely one of the most frustrating.
100%.
And from going someone who's right-handed to just left hand, how did you actually adjust?
So, interestingly, obviously, I was never a brilliant golfer. I just really enjoyed it, and it was a time you spend with mates, and you nothing better than walking down a fairway, having some good chats, and just being out there. And soon after I recovered, I was joking around with one of my good mates, and he said, "Why don't we just go to the range? Like, what's the harm? You love golf. Why don't you just go give it a go?" And then there was nothing more freeing that, when you hit a really good golf shot, like that moment where you hear it come off the club face and you just watch the ball go. When I had the one hand, obviously it was really tough, like the first time swinging a golf club. I still had like bandages on and everything. And I remember him just like giving me a few little tips, and I did a few swings, and one just came off the face so well. There's actually a video of it that also got me into a crazy journey in itself. But that shot there just was such a moment where I was like, who cares what's happened? Like, you can still get that feeling where you hear it come off the club face and you watch the ball go through. And then from then, I was just like, okay, now the more you practice and the more you enjoy it, the better you'll get, and it'll just kind of steamroll from there. So I think sport is a great equalizer where effort kind of doesn't cancel out talent all the way, but effort goes a long way. You see it with all our professional guys, like when we go watch SA20 or whatever, they put so much effort into learning their craft and they know what their skills are. So like, I don't hit the golf ball very far because one arm and stuff, but I know that my misses don't really go too far left or right. I just play granny golf. I hit it nice and sweet down the fairway to the green, just have a good time. And it's always been a great thing for me to always know that no matter what's going on, no matter how much we're dwelling on a bad moment, you can always just sit there and listen to that ball come off the club face. So it was just a really cool thing. I had no idea that I was going to be able to do it and that it was going to be such a big part of like my journey. But yeah, really cool, really cool.
And through that, taking that step, that leap, you, when you went to the range, Gary Player actually ended up seeing that video, and that led to a fundraiser. Do you mind explaining a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, so we filmed the video or like a few little clips, and then I ended up posting on Instagram. You know, just like I don't post too much on social media, but it was like a cool moment to all my circle, my community that have like seen me struggle. It was a cool moment to say like, look where I am now, like after the operation. And then through a contact from my old school, Gary Player ended up actually seeing the video, and then he invited my mom and I to Sun City to play 9 holes, and literally just chat with him, play 9 holes, have lunch. It was unbelievable. Went up to with Gary Player to Sun City. The $1 million was currently being set up, so we played Lost City. Losing my words out. We played Lost City. It was just Gary Player, a representative from, he used to be on Super Sports, and one other guy. And I sat on a golf cart with Gary Player. He hardly sat in the golf cart because this man was running up and down the fairway, but just chatted with him. And through chatting with him, told him my story. And he actually then offered to host a golf day at his golf course, Blair Athol. And everything just kind of rolled from there. Then we had the idea to launch a foundation where one of my big goals was always to raise enough money to have a myoelectric prosthesis, which is a prosthetic arm which with sensors connects to your nerves, and you can get a lot of control of the hand just from using the muscles in your your stump. So that was my goal. And then we thought we could use my story and my goals to help other people as well. So we got into contact with a young girl from a poorer community that was also missing an arm. And we were like, hey, cool, we're going to raise money for not just my prosthetic, but hers as well. And we ended up realizing that as a very small child, and prosthetics are very costly, that it wasn't the best use of funds to get her a prosthetic arm, because then she would grow out of it and there would be constant maintenance and more arms needed. So we actually raised money towards helping her with her schooling and all the resources she needed to be on a better path in terms of her education. We thought that was a much better empowerment for her. But yeah, it was absolutely epic. Like, I played 9 holes with Gary Player. Then 2 months later, we had a golf day, full out golf day. He did a whole show for everyone before we teed off. Shotgun start, food, drinks. We had an auction afterwards with all sorts of sports memorabilia, just raising money for myself and this young girl. And then sadly, after all that had gone and we'd been on such a good path, COVID hit. Obviously, it was a major shock to all of us. Like, just out of nowhere, this massive global pandemic just takes over. So we were on such a good path, and we had raised some really good funds. Luckily, we did raise enough to um, help this young lady on like a really good path, and we didn't quite get to the target of for my prosthetic arm. But after we tied up all the loose ends, it is still in the plans to one day, now that I'm getting a bit more settled into work and being on my own 2 feet, I'll never let that foundation dream kind of like die out and just fizzle out. I still have a passion for spreading my story and using it to help others. So we'll always come back. But yeah, it was probably one of the coolest periods of my life. Just where one simple little video at the driving range turned up to like 9 holes with Gary Player and a whole golf day where it was the Cameron Joubert and Gary Player golf day. Like
Wow.
it was like, I don't know, I'll tell my kids about that. Like Gary Player is one of the greatest sportsmen to ever come out of South Africa. And for him to take the time, like just from hearing my story, to take the time to do that for me was incredible. And like I'll never forget those moments.
I think it's incredible of him as well to reach out, but what really inspires me, I think it's such a beautiful thing in you and just in human beings in general to want to help other people, especially when you're going through a difficult time yourself or you're struggling. And like you said, you didn't want this whole event to be just focused on you. You wanted to help other people and share your story, not as a way to get sympathy or anything like that. You just wanted to spread your message and also spread a message for people that are going through similar things. What do you think it is inside of you that inspires you to help others, even when you're struggling yourself sometimes?
Yeah, I think one of the massive things for me was obviously when something bad happens to you in life, no matter what the hardship is, we all have different hardships and we have experienced things at a different level. But when I spent those weeks and months in the hospital, seeing other people and seeing the degree to which they were struggling, like switched my whole perspective. I was like, yes, I had quite an aggressive cancer and I lost my arm, but there's people that are there on like their 30th chemotherapy for like brain cancer or breast cancer or like things that have impacted their life for far longer and at far worse like level, that I realized no matter what you're going through, there's always something to learn and there's always somebody else that might be going through something similar or worse. So it was a huge learning curve. Like I absolutely now I really don't like obviously the hospital because I've had some traumatic experiences, but the worst part of the hospital for me is you see other people struggling. Like there's a bad vibe around the hospital just because you know you're not there because you're having fun. Like you're there for something that's not great, but
Yeah.
there's hundreds of people that are there for stuff that's even worse. So like I just had a huge perspective shift, and I think that's where it really like triggered in my mind that we all have something that we can use to help others. Like it doesn't matter. Like some people are better at speaking publicly or doing acts of service or whatever it is. We all have something that we can give back to our communities, and I just thought that sharing my story and uplifting people and trying to like take a burden off them to say like I also went through this or I also struggled with this was something that helped me. Like it gave me a good feeling to
Know
see
that you're
how
not alone.
yeah 100%, like people that go through like medical issues, like you feel like you're in this little bubble of your community's thriving but now you really struggling, but there's a handful of people in your direct circle that are going through something similar, and it just helps to have that sense of yeah, like you're not just yourself going through this.
So I think what you're referring to is a support system and knowing that you're not alone. How can friends and family best support someone who's going through cancer treatment or recovery?
So it's an interesting as I've gone along the years, like I've got better at expressing myself. Where in the moment, I think there was so much going on that I was a very difficult person to like read and like understand what I actually needed from people. So I think the biggest thing for like friends and family is not be like super assertive with what you feel is the right way to be there for someone. Like take your time to understand what they need. So for me, I was very bad at speaking about my emotions, and obviously it's a very emotional period. But I was encouraged to go speak to someone, see a psychologist. So after much deliberation, I did go see one just before I was amputated and just after to like help me understand what I was feeling inside. And I think the biggest thing for me is my circle of people, my community, allowed me that time to not be difficult, but be a little bit like harder to sort of see what was going on and like read. And then when I was ready, they gave me a platform to express and like speak. So my direct family was obviously awesome, my mom and my brother. And then my long-term girlfriend, who I only started dating months before I got diagnosed with cancer, and we've now been together for almost 7 years. So like they allowed me that time to understand where I was without being like overly like they were there. Like I knew they were always there for me, like if I needed them, but they would never overexert like making me speak about things or making me feel what I was going through. So I think the biggest thing for a community is just understanding the person going through the trauma, taking the time to let them tell you how they need, like what they need from you or how they need help. So yeah, I think it's just you got to be really observant and empathetic to understand what somebody needs rather than, oh, I when I'm feeling down or when I'm going through something, this is what I need, so let me project that onto them. Because then there's a lot of people that want to be involved when you're going through something. Like you'll see teachers, past teachers, and friends you haven't spoken to a while, like they never want to see you go through something, so they're like, oh, now everyone's all of a sudden there. It's quite overwhelming, to go from haven't spoken to you for a while, but now like all of a sudden, okay, what can I do? Like you just got to be a little bit more cautious in how you proceed and just allow them to be vocal to you, and as they settle in, like really understand what they need first. That's like the biggest thing for me is just understanding what the person needs rather than, oh, I think this will help, like, or like, oh, I can do this. It's not
Just
like
getting
your,
suggestions all the
yeah,
time.
it's not like your trauma, so like how can I help you? Like if you went through something, like I wouldn't just project how I think would help. Just I would listen to you and see what you need is my biggest thing, I think.
And what impact did your family and your girlfriend have on your ability to come out of this?
In like without them, I would definitely not be where I am today. Like I put them through a lot of stress and anxiety and trauma on their own end because like my doctor said that if I didn't have my amputation, I had about, I think it was like 16 to 18 months from that day. So obviously, when I was in those moments, the doctor wouldn't project. They will never project timelines onto you in that moment, when you're having to make decisions. But my family and my girlfriend, and they're all involved in that. So they had this massive cloud of stress and anxiety, and they, through all of that, they just were there for me. So like nobody was there for them. They were all like kind of there for each other, but they were all focused on me. So for such a long period, like I just had this huge support around me that just felt unwavering because they felt so strong and they never showed their anxiety. Like obviously a few times, like my mom, my girlfriend, because it is a huge emotional thing, but I just felt like I had these rocks that I could just lean on and I could be experiencing this, but they were just there. And then as we progress, like we speak about it more and I can see what they went through. But in that moment, they just were unwavering support. My brother, my girlfriend, my closest friends, like my whole family, it was just, it didn't even feel, at times it did, but it didn't even feel like they were really super down from it. They were just there for me. So without them, I definitely wouldn't have had the courage to go back to varsity. Like I definitely wouldn't have the confidence to do some of the things I did in terms of the fundraising. Like they were just such a great platform for me to understand that they're there to help me if I fall down. But like, yeah, it was just always there for me. So grateful for everyone I had and still have. I still have them. But yeah.
And once you actually finally did recover, how did your perspective on life change?
So like I think when you, especially when it's like a disability that you weren't born with or like it didn't happen at a super young age, you're still kind of like recovering like piece by piece. So as I've grown, like certain things that you would think that you remove a problem and all the problems end, but there's been complications and different things that I've gone through. So my recovery, I think I'm still always recovering, but I'm just getting better and better each day. So my perspective is that um, you always have something to learn. So before this all happened, like I just thought I was in my little bubble. I was going to study this degree. I was going to do this job and have these hobbies, but I never really looked at it as a continuous growing, like a continuous learning. Like life, you learn every day. Like we learn from people every day. Like you meet someone on a bus, a train, or whatever. Like you learn from those engagements. And I never saw it that as that, but now I really just look at it like every single day we're gonna get better at something, or we're gonna get worse at something. Like we're learning. So it just gave me that you really just have to embrace that you've got so much to learn. You've got so much to grow. You're never going to be the number one or the best at this or perfect at that, but there's always something to strive for. Where I didn't quite get that before all of this, but now, yeah, like just always striving for something.
And obviously, you had that realization because of what happened to you. If you could go back and change what happened to you, would you?
So, that is a really difficult one because I really love who I am today, but there's aspects of the process that obviously, okay, so I'm gonna go on a little tangent, but
Go
part
for
of the
it.
part
That's
of
what we are
the
for.
part of the chemotherapy treatment, like there's like the oncologist is like a chemo chef. Like he puts together a recipe of your treatment based on research and literature. And there's one thing that you never want to be a part of your chemo recipe. And everyone, maybe someone listening to this who's gone through it, is they call it many things. Fanta orange, the red devil. It's so you have multiple, it's a drip, obviously, chemotherapy. So I had a port in my chest and you would be connected to this drip. It's a little bit more high tech than a standard little drip. It's like got a measured rate for each medication. And I was on a 32, 36 hour drip for this medication. And they would swap the bags and it was a whole procedure. But when this bag came, bright red bag would get hooked up, possibly the worst thing I've ever gone through. So I've gone through chemo, I've gone through kidney stones, but that red bag, Fanta orange, red devil, whatever you want to call it, don't say it 3 times because you don't want to bring it in. But yo, that experience, if I could remove that from my life, I would take it away. But the rest of the learning and what happened, I'm happy where I am today. Just that small little moment. I won't go into the details, but you can Google it afterwards. The Fanta orange part of the chemo was horrific. I've never felt so dehumanized by a bag of medicine in my entire life. Like you just felt like a shell of a human being. Like everything, because basically chemo is like it kills a lot of like your cells and like you're basically like really damaging your body to try kill something super strong that's not meant to be there. And that red bag gives me the heebie-jeebies even speaking about it. But yeah, that's the only thing I could honestly say that my whole life and where I am today would be better if I didn't have to go through that bag. But it is what it is. The whole package. You can't just take parts of it. So
What I think so amazing though is how you've shifted your mindset, and you could have easily gone into a place where you had other people feeling sorry for you, like we spoke about before, but instead you actually turned it into a strength. So, what would you say is the first step for someone wanting to get out of a dark place or better their situation?
So it's an interesting one because obviously each circumstance is its own thing and each person's hardship is its own thing. But I think really just understanding that there is going to be times like I went through some really dark patches in my journey where I really struggled with a lot of anger and frustration because a peak moment of my life, like really just enjoying being independent and being at varsity and like being with my girlfriend and my friends and experiencing a new place was like stripped away by something that was completely spontaneous and had no sort of rooting in like why it happened. But I think the biggest thing is you have to understand that those times come. Like nobody's life is naturally perfect. Nobody's life is easy to the point where they get what they want and they don't have to work for it or go through something to get there. So I think the first step, which took me a long time, like I feel confident and settled in myself now. And like I might from the outside look like I'm okay and doing great and I'm confident. But there was a period where I really had no sort of I didn't even know what my mindset was. Like I was angry at this, but I was insecure about doing this. And you just have to understand that sometimes you will have those moments in life. And as soon as you can accept that and you can accept that life is incredible, life is great, life is so many experiences, but life is also difficult. Life also has hardships, life also has mountains to climb to get to where you want to go. And acceptance, which it might sound cliche and silly, but acceptance is literally the first step. Like you can be in the darkest time, but if you don't accept that this is a struggle point and that you need to change something up or that you need to seek help or need to go it from a different angle, you won't move past that. You have to understand that this is not what you want, but you got to work through it to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going through a breakup myself quite recently, and it's been very difficult to handle. And I think the way that I've tried to go about it is not just to hide from my feelings. Obviously, you get times where your feelings are a little bit too intense to
Yeah.
handle, and then you need to try shift your mindset a little bit or maybe distract yourself. But I've tried going into that pain because I think in previous situations in my life, I've kind of run from it. And it's difficult. I mean, you go out and people say, "How you doing?" And you want to just go with the stock standard,
Yeah.
good things, how you like, yeah, work's fine, but deep down you're actually going through a bit of pain.
Yeah.
So the way that I've dealt just with that situation is, speaking to people, I've actually said, you know what, I'm actually not
Yeah.
doing so great at the moment. And I think it's still early days, but I think it's really helped me in my grieving
Yeah.
process so far.
But
Yeah.
you've even just in listening to that conversation, obviously, I'm sorry you're going through this. Like I obviously have known you in your relationship and now afterwards, and I'm always there for a chat. But you've accepted that there's layers to your feelings, and when you express them, is you choose those times. Like as you say, when you're out in a public space and having a good time, you can't exactly really show your true feelings. Nobody's really
Mm.
going to have that time to give you the time to speak and time to give back like that you need, but you've understood that you aren't okay on a certain level, but there's times to then bring it out and deal with it. But you know that it's there. You know that that pain is there and it's horrible, but you have to understand that it's there and be able to bring it up and speak about it. And that's like, I think as men in society, something that we naturally maybe struggle with to understand those layers of emotion
Mm.
and say, like, we can't just bottle this down and press it until it's gone. Whereas, like, you've already understood, like, it's a horrible time to go through, but you know that you have that, like that pain, you've got that grievance, and then you can work through it slowly. Like, you got to work through it slowly. But I think you really got past like accepting that it's not a great time, but you can deal with it. Like you can work through those emotions and come out on the other side, whether it's realizing something about your life or being happier, like you know that you can get to that point.
But I think it's difficult, especially as men, because a lot of the talk comes around like stiffen up like your upper lip
Yeah,
and just deal with it. And like you said earlier, while you were recovering, you're quite hesitant to go see a psychologist.
yeah,
And I think what I've found, so I started seeing a psychologist, I think early last year, and it's helped me so much just to it's helped me deal with my breakup at the moment as well.
yeah.
It's just helped me deal with emotions that I in the past would always push aside.
Suppress, just, yeah,
And I used to get quite annoyed with myself with the way when I was anxious and I didn't feel like I should be anxious in that situation, or I was angry about something and I would say, sure, Mike, you normally like a lot more of a calm guy than that.
yeah,
Like, and I would start beating myself up about my own thoughts. And I think going to a psychologist it's definitely helped me just deal with my thoughts and
yeah,
what I'm going through. And it heals a lot quicker,
yeah.
I feel.
I would never think that I'll be sitting here and like advocating for psychology, but it's so important to have somebody outside of like your everyday circle that you can express and they know how to like bring that out of you. And we suppress so much in society, like so many things that you don't want people to see, and like you don't want that persona. Like I think we have a very similar kind of like characteristic. We're quite mellow, quite easygoing, but we might be like a duck on the surface, like the feet are going crazy, but on the surface it looks all calm and chill.
Yeah, I can relate
See, yeah,
because honestly, I've had so many people say, "Oh, in a difficult situation, it would be so nice to have Mike, like he's calm."
calm, yeah.
But they don't
The
see
anxiety, that's,
underneath the
yeah,
surface, like there's a lot of anxiety within there, and like I'm sure you have that
100%, yeah.
quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
What's been the hardest lesson that you've learned during your 20s in this stage of your life?
You're really bringing it into the deep thoughts here. So I think one of the biggest things for me is in our generation, we can be self centered, quite like our generation as a whole can be self centered sometimes, where we don't see outside of our little bubble, and your actions can have serious repercussions on people that are closest to you. And I learned a lesson very quickly that when I was struggling with like anger and stuff and just struggling in my own right, I would impact other people's lives like that are very close to me subconscious. Like I wouldn't even realize I'm doing it, but you got to understand that your actions have repercussions further than yourself. So that was a big lesson for me growing up. And you know, when you're going to varsity and like trying to be on your own 2 feet and you're getting like you're becoming an adult sort of, you have to understand that your actions don't just impact yourself, they impact everyone around you, whether it's your colleagues or your girlfriend or your friends or your family. Like your actions are bigger than who you are. So big lesson for me was just you have to look at life like you're not just the sole being who's here to do this. You you do impact other people, even if you're not trying to. So just be understanding that you got to really take care with what, like your actions and your decisions, because it's not just you.
I think for me, what I've realized is that no one has their shit together.
Yeah,
Like growing up, I always thought once you hit like a certain age or you've gone through certain experiences, like
yeah,
you covered, you know how to do your taxes, you know how to do everything. Like no curveball's gonna affect you. And I think that's kind of just the way that people mask up their
yeah,
feelings. Um, Yeah, I just like I think for me, in a way, it's quite a nice thing to realize because I always used to compare myself to others,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'd be like, oh well, they've got this job or they're sorted, and I've realized like actually no one's got their shit together.
Yeah, some people have it slightly more together, but like nobody's got it truly all in little neat boxes and things get ticked off. Yeah, it is crazy, yeah. Like people look like they're having the best time ever in life, like when you look from the outside,
Hmm.
but they've got their own things going on. That's yeah. If we could walk a day in other people's shoes and see like, oh my word, wow, okay, take me back to my struggles, take me back to my flipping debit orders. But yeah, it is a crazy realization.
It's so true, and we were speaking about it in the car earlier. I mean, for me, I wouldn't be, I might post a photo of me on holiday at the beach or whatever,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna post a photo of me crying over my breakup.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, people don't really see that side. So I think the natural assumption is that everything's,
Living your best.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything's just going well. And I think like you said earlier, it's quite important to have that empathetic side to you. How do you think we as a society can show more compassion towards one another?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult in the age we live in where we have all these platforms where it's a platform to show great experiences and to show great moments. And like as you said, you're not going to post such vulnerable things on like your Instagram feed. Like that's not going to get clicks, is it? But
Mm,
um I think just when you go out of that and in your own circles, just giving people time to like speak their mind or like having deeper conversations. Like we spend a lot of time doing things, but like not really experiencing with like, I think maybe just our generation, like we always on to the next big thing and like we
mm,
do so many things, but we don't as often just, sit down and have a chat and have a braai and have a chat. And like, I think people have a lot to share, but like if you're in a club, which is great, but if you're in a club like all the time and you don't actually have conversations and you go do this and that and this and that, but you never really just sit down with the people closest to you and, share about what's going on. Like now we're in a period where everyone's like making their careers and building businesses and really going out on their own and doing such cool stuff. But like we don't maybe I'm guilty of this, like we don't give them our friends and our family time to like share that,
mm.
where it's always like, oh, let's focus on this, let's do that. So I think as society, like just take a little bit more time to just share with one another, like and like really want to get to know people instead of just do things with them. But yeah, obviously I love a good jawl. I love a festival. I love going to the
Mm.
cricket. I mean, the cricket's going to be great later. But like aside from that, like just mixing it up, being a
Yeah.
bit more like bringing in the wholesomeness, bring in something where you just together and sharing, and then great on Saturday we'll go have a jawl. But like just mix it up a bit. Like I think we're getting into a bit of a thing where we always just looking for something to occupy our brains, where we're not like just sharing.
And obviously, it's important to have friends that help you along your journey of life. But also, there's times where I would say that the biggest relationship and the most important relationship is the one that you have with yourself. And how have you worked on that relationship with yourself up until now?
You really got the brain ticking over this morning. So I think I have struggled with myself and like who I was going through what I went through because I had like a clear image of who I was before it, and then the lines were blurred for a while. But I think now I'm happy in myself and like I'm proud of myself, and it makes me feel good like what I'm accomplishing in life. So I think you just really got to, it's a journey. Like you just got to accept it and like go along with, you have goals in mind. And like I think goal setting is a great way to like, you have an end goal, but then you got to love the journey on the way. So I think just really being okay with having shit times and like hardships, and okay with not getting to that goal when I wanted to necessarily, but just understanding that there's so many branches of life, like so many things have to happen for you to get where you want to go. So me right now, like I'm just happy with where I am, and I'm happy knowing that if a hardship comes my way, whatever form it is, whether it's relationships or a trauma of some sort, I have the tools from my previous learnings of my journey to get through it and then go back onto the path I want to go on, even if I take a little short left here or whatever. But just understanding that you can't always just, it's not instant gratification. Like you can't just get where you want to go. Um, Hardships will come and you'll deal with them. So right now, yeah, just happy to carry on the journey.
And in closing, what message do you want to spread, not only to people that have gone through similar life experiences to you, but also just people around the world?
So I think my biggest message is like going back to what I said is it's not just you. Like you're not just having a great time or you're not just going through this hardship. Like there's, let's say my cancer was super rare and there's like 3% of the world that will experience it or something. That's completely wrong. Don't reference me on that. But you have to understand that 3% of the population of the world is massive. Like there's people experiencing the exact same thing as you or something very similar. So my biggest message is just understanding that you have a story, someone else has a story, someone else has a story, and you can all learn from each other. And we can just be better friends, better partners, better colleagues, just by having that empathy to understand somebody else before you judge, before you create a perception of someone. And just, yeah, it's not just you. Whether it's hard time or a good time, it's not just you. And you can always be empowered by sharing and by listening. And it's much easier said than done. Obviously, sitting on a comfy couch with a great setup around me, but like it's
Shout
not
out
just
Real
you.
Global Productions.
Yeah, yeah, like it really is much easier said than done from this position. But yeah, biggest message, not just you.
Thanks, Cam. And I also just want to thank you for your time today and for sharing your story. I mean, we've had many conversations in the past, and I honestly feel like you are one of the most selfless people that
Thanks, man.
I've
Means a
ever
lot.
met in my life. And I really do wish you the best with all of your future fundraisers. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you on the golf course soon with your prosthetic arm. And yeah, I'm looking forward to today at the cricket. And yeah, honestly, in such a short space of time, I think we've really grown our friendship.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think you an awesome person. So thanks for today, Cam.
Thanks for having me. It was a great experience. Obviously we've had great chats, but it was just really cool to be a part of your project here. So yeah, thanks so much. It was an awesome experience today.
Thanks, Cam. Likewise.